Atul Singh. I'm the founder, CEO, and editor-in-chief of Fair Observer. I'm here as a guest of General B.K. Sharma, the Director General of the United Service Institution, which is a magnificent institution of 1870 vintage. They do a whole bunch of interesting things, from research to war games to events to skilling folks from the defense services and beyond. And today we are discussing something quite deep, profound, and in fact far-reaching. And the topic is the great balancing game India has to play today. And what do we really mean by great balancing? Well, we got our independence in 1947. We were not an expeditionary colonial power. We got independence together with the extremely brutal act of partition. There was a massive Hindu-Muslim divide. Soon war broke out with Pakistan over Jammu and Kashmir, the state he comes from. And then very shortly, just 15 years after our independence, we had a war with China. I'm of course referring to 1962. And we've had to, right from our early days, navigate between the USA, the United States of America, and the USSR, or the Soviet Union, who were in a pretty nasty Cold War. And today, we have moved on to a new era of a new Cold War. We have hostile neighbors on our borders. We have superpowers jostling for influence in our neighborhood. Bangladesh is a key example. And we have all sorts of internal divisions, as well as interference in internal matters by outside powers. So I've given a long introduction. I'll now ask General B.K. Sharma about the great balancing game we have to play. What are the major powers and what exactly do we need to do?
Thank you, Atulji. This is a very pertinent question. But before I get on to the balancing, let me say that I'm proud to be an Indian, belonging to a country which is a civilizational state, 5,000 years of civilization, right?
Continuous years.
Continuous years.
Yeah.
We've been able to ward off centuries of subjugation, yet retain our unique culture and identity. Today we are the largest democracy in the world, with the probably the model form of electioneering. Then we are the fifth largest economy, poised to be the third largest economy in the world, and fourth largest armed forces in the world. Now, there is something unique about India, that even at our very inception as an independent state, we chose to be a non-aligned country, right? And today, whatever we talk about our strategic autonomy and multi-vector engagement, it is actually an inheritance of our non-alignment, but with new geopolitical reality construct, right? That time we did not have the wherewithal and the leverages. Today, India has the heft and the leverages to walk the talk. Therefore,
that's true, but just to interject very quickly, in 1962, we were economically more prosperous than China. So it wasn't just about heft. I think we now have greater heft. But at that time when we were non-aligned, we were a little perhaps too idealistic, if I may say so. And we have been chastened a little bit by reality since.
See, one of the reasons which informed Nehru's non-aligned policy was our bitter memories with the colonial era.
Of course.
Right.
Of course.
So those were the realities of that time.
And to be fair to him, what he imagined was extraordinarily visionary, if impossibly idealistic, because China had suffered a century of humiliation. China had gone through opium wars. Where was the opium cultivated? In India. So you got famine for the brown people and you got addiction for the yellow people. And so in many ways, what Nehru was envisaging was an ideal. If India and China could have formed a free trade union, if they could have come together to unite and be the new center or the new balance of power, we would have seen a very different world. But at the same time, neighbors tend to have rivalries, as Chanakya pointed out more than 2,000 years ago. So things were a little more complicated than an ideal. But please carry on.
Yeah. You see, I just want to add to what you said. You see, at that point in time, when we got independence, the Indian army was taken as part of a British army because we were carrying the legacy, the customs, the traditions, and in some cases even Indian army had fought alongside the British, right? So those were the memories, and there was a kind of a absence of a dialogue between the new generation military officers who came from British army and the political leadership.
Yes.
And that is why Nehru went on a premise that why do you need a military? Why do you need a police? He had that notion of some kind of an idealistic peaceful state, Panchsheel and peaceful coexistence. But that was far-fetched from reality, because look at concurrently the way China, gained its independence, or it became an independent country in 1949.
Through civil war.
Through civil war. You look at Long March, kind of, Japanese occupation. So PLA was very much part of the political, the juggernaut of China, and they had blooded their hands in the conflicts, whereas Indian army had a different kind of experience.
And then the Communist Party leaders were in many ways guerrilla commanders, including Mao Zedong.
Absolutely. And then Nehru also made certain assumptions. That first was that Chinese will never enter Tibet, and second thing was that Chinese will never invade India, right? And when Chinese in 1959 entered Tibet, actually we were supplying salt and rice through Nathula to the PLA in Tibet. So that was the kind of notion. But I think we got a rude shock in 1962, and that helped us in understanding the importance of having strong military. And since then, with little bit of sort of, some kind of slippages here and there, but we are on an upward trajectory.
So my father and my late uncle, my father's elder brother, say something, have always, or one of them is dead, but they said something very wise and profound. They said, we could have sent a thank you card to the Chinese for 1962, because 1962 enabled us to fight off Pakistan in 1965 and create Bangladesh in 1971. So 62 in a way was excellent in the long run for India's maturity as a new power.
True. So therefore, looking at India's stature and heft today, we cannot work under the tutelage of any other country, right? So that is why this strategic autonomy that we are practicing, it comes from a lot of internal strengths that we have. And you look at our historical past. For example, Soviet Union has been our time-tested partner, be it whatever the strategic infrastructure programs which were started in India, whether it was our military modernization, whether it was the friendship treaty that we signed with them to ward off the strategic coercion in which both UK and US joined, right, in Bangladesh war. So those are also the pleasant memories which are very much embedded in Indian psyche. And then we also are very well conversant with our ground realities, that if China today is a big elephant in the room, Americans are thousands of kilometers, 10,000 kilometers away from China, whereas Chinese are next door with us, so are Pakistanis, right? And therefore, keeping in view this whole thing, it is but natural for India to steer and navigate its own course, right? And that is why this strategic balancing becomes extremely important. At the same time, we have not permitted ourselves to be a hostage of our undue dependence on Soviet Union earlier and now Russia. We've gone for diversification, and even in this Ukraine war, we're not outrightly bandwagoned with Russia. We have said that wars are not relevant in today's era, and this is an era of peace and this and that, and we abstained from voting. At the same time, we've not signed on dotted line as far as America is concerned, right? Despite certain pressures which came on us, we've signed 4 foundational agreements with the Americans. Today, our initiative for this critical and emerging technology is very, very important. 2.2 plus 2 kind of a construct. We have about $21 billion worth of military trade with the Americans. Our bilateral trade is to the tune of about $200. But at the same time, I think
billion.
200 billion.
Yeah.
At the same time, you look at our geographical position. We are typically a Mackender's heartland state, and also what you call is the Spikeman's rimland state. So therefore, our interests are both in Eurasia, continental landmass, and also in the Indo-Pacific. And in some ways, we are a strategic bridge between these two regions. And that is why, on one hand, while we are members of Quad and many other multilateral organizations, on the other hand, we are also active members in BRICS and in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? So that is where from our strategic engagement comes.
So I hear what you're saying. I concur with you, but I also sometimes wonder that this strange position geopolitically also leads to some confusion, because we have often not been clear about our strategic interests. So yes, we are a member of BRICS, but BRICS now has expanded to so many different countries. It is highly amorphous. It wasn't very cohesive to begin with. Quad began, of course, as an entity. The Japanese pushed it through, but what does it really mean? And the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, well, we know that is a Chinese shop, and we are there because we have to trade with China. China is our biggest neighbor, but what exactly is our role there? And when it comes to diplomacy, and this is where I will raise a question, we just have 800 diplomats. The Germans have 5,000, and we recruit through one examination. So there are lots of things we have to do, such as the building of institutions, which we haven't done yet.
See, let me tell you firstly what are our core interests as
Perfect.
far as Russia is concerned. Firstly, we do not want in the Eurasian continental landmass Russia to fall lock, stock and barrel in the Chinese lap.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
That would be very, very harmful.
Yeah.
Secondly, it is a major source of energy for India. Today, we are the largest exporters of energy from Russia. Cheap energy on very, very competitive prices.
Are we the largest
We've
importers?
overtaken China.
Oh,
right.
wow. That's
Right.
spectacular.
Now, because of Russia's pivot to Asia and this international north-south trade corridor or Vladivostok-Chennai corridor, these are the two avenues, strategic avenues, which will make us a competitive player in Eurasian landmass, Mackender's landmass. If you don't have this talk with Russians, then we will get isolated and there will be total sway of China in Central Asia and Eurasia. So it is a strategic imperative for India, besides arms and energy and your nuclear program, to remain engaged with Russia.
So we need a strong Russia to counterbalance China.
Absolutely. Concurrently with this, why is America so important for us? Firstly, it's a democracy. We have certain shared values, people to people contact, and soft power engagement is very, very strong, right? And if you really need niche and modern technology, or you need foreign direct investments in India,
Yeah.
then it has to come, it cannot come to us from Russia. It has to come to us from United States of America.
I mean, foreign institutional investment,
Invest-
even more than FDI, because
absolutely.
I live in Washington, and it's extraordinary how innovative, how dynamic, and how powerful the American economy is. It's the eighth wonder of the world.
So the point was, when actually we were playing this multi-vector kind of an engagement, there were pressures coming to us from Russia, as if we've fallen into the American orbit, and there were pressures coming to us from United States, as if we bagging with Russia. But we've been able to balance it out very, very nicely, and they have realized that India has its own position, its own strategic interests, and therefore India will navigate its own course as far as this geopolitical milieu is concerned. In the process, what has happened, that we have emerged as a natural, important stakeholder in championing the voice of the cause of Global South, as you would have seen from the resolution of the declaration which was passed very recently.
Yeah, and that is in keeping with the long-standing tradition. Even before independence,
Yeah.
our leaders supported independence of other former colonies, or other colonies at the time they were colonies. So India played a huge role in the liberation struggles of African countries. India played a huge role in supporting, for instance, Malaysian independence. The British, of course, crushed the Malay insurgency. They even crushed Mau Mau in Kenya. So India's always been, in many ways, a leader of the globals, what we now call the Global South. Non-aligned movement was a classic example, and we've continued with that tradition in a way.
So therefore, I would say today, because of our geostrategic location, because of our heft, and because of our foreign policy, we are in a sweet spot today, right? Both sides have agreed that, well, India is well within its rights to steer its own course and decide its own destiny. The only, I would say, a kind of a shadow that is cast on India's aspirations is what is happening in our neighborhood, which we had discussed in the previous episode.
Correct.
If we are not able to manage your strategic neighborhood, as it is, your what you call Connect Central Asia policy today is stymied because of Afghan factor, Pakistan factor, even Iran factor, right?
Yeah.
The only outreach that we had to the world is either through Myanmar or through the Indian Ocean region. But the developments which are taking place in, say, Manipur,
Correct.
for that example, military junta which is now, hobnobbing with Chinese.
In
That-
Myanmar, yeah?
In Myanmar, that stymies your India's Act East policy, your Kaladan project, your trilateral highway to reach out to Southeast Asia. And another development, we were looking at an alternate to expand your Siliguri corridor by having your trade through Bangladesh. Now a new development has taken place in Bangladesh, and perhaps they may not be so amenable, at least in the near future, to give India that connectivity to our northeastern states. Right. So this is the challenge which has come, and in this vacuum, what happens? China can come and play a big role.
Yeah.
Pakistan can encash on the sentiments of Jamaat-e-Islami, who've been very hostile towards India,
Yes.
and we can have another ideological front actually in Bangladesh, which we have to manage. And similar is true as far as your Maldives is concerned, right? Given the demography there and certain ethnicity. So I think India should, at the moment, rather than going for too much of strategic outreach and tom-tomming
Yeah.
about great power relationship and this and that, I think our focus should be look into in your immediate strategic zone, and India has but a Hobson choice to be a preeminent player in South Asia and in the Indian Ocean region. If we are not a preeminent player in our traditional strategic space, then all our dreams will actually fall apart as far as rest of the world is concerned.
So very interesting. You mentioned that Bangladesh की बातें करते हैं. पड़ोसी है हमारा. We'll talk about Bangladesh, our neighbor. You said that China could be fishing in troubled waters. Bangladesh is now a mess. Pakistan is certainly fishing in those waters, Jamaat-e-Islami. The US had turned against Sheikh Hasina. That's an open secret because they did not consider her a democratic leader. They saw her as an autocrat. We were caught napping. Our intelligence agencies did not expect this to happen. I have been told by people within our intelligence agencies, some of the finest officers we have, that sir, heads should roll. I don't want to get into details, they were told to me in confidence, but the reality is that we are certainly now, for the first time in many decades, for all the talk of G20, in some ways, all this talk on G20 was a distraction. Everyone coming, it was a big tamasha. Great, wonderful, makes you feel good. But at the end of the day, if you have problems in Nepal, you have problems with Pakistan, you have problems along the line of actual control with China, you have a mess in Bangladesh, you have challenges in Maldives, and you have an iffy situation in Sri Lanka, you've got to sort that out.
Yes, there's no denying the fact, and I think there is a great realization in our policy establishment today.
Hold fire. What do you mean by the policy establishment? Is it the Prime Minister's office?
Yeah,
is it the Foreign Ministry? Is it the Defense Ministry?
I mean, essentially, when I say PMO, because everything is under the rubric of PMO.
Yeah, and it has expanded dramatically, the Prime Minister's
PMO.
office.
So PMO's office, I think they're seized of these challenges, and I'm sure there's some kind of a collective reflection which is taking place. No matter that, some so untoward or unsavory geopolitical developments have taken place in our neighborhood. But what is on our side is our strategic geography, right? No matter what you do, India is the largest country, it is the most thriving economy, it's an island of stability, and these countries will have to be dependent on India in one form or the other. For example, if you look at the statistics, Bangladesh, its GDP had exceeded, per capita income had exceeded that of India.
Still is ahead of
India. And it's still ahead of India.
Yeah.
The human development indices were better than India. But all this was because of their very good cozy relations with India. Be it supply of power, be it the container trade, be it your other trade, garments and other things.
Yeah.
Being good with India, this gave a boost to Bangladesh's economy. It's a classic example that in our neighborhood, how we were able to sign a land boundary agreement with Bangladesh. Even in the maritime disputes, we actually heeded the verdict of the international verdict, the Hague verdict, and we settled that dispute. The only contentious issue which remained was about, because of the domestic politics, was about your, what is this river? Teesta river, that was the...
Yeah.
So what I say that even Bangladesh cannot do, its prosperity is actually predicated on having good relations with India. So in the interim, maybe there is a little bit of I would say a dent in our relationship, but it has its own natural way of repairing itself, mending those bridges, and I think they will also realize that they can't go too far without India. They don't want, I'm sure that at least common Bangladeshi doesn't want to go the Pakistani way, right? At least they are Bengalis, they're very intelligent people, they will understand this. So sooner
Even Pakistanis are not so intelligent.
so sooner or later,
they should eat more fish.
Sooner or later, I think this what you call is this eruption is going to settle down. the realities will dawn, and we'll find out a new modus vivendi to do a good sort of a work, a good relationship with one another.
Brilliant, brilliant. So on that note, thank you very much for listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to this channel and make sure you follow the United Service Institution across all social media. You sign up for the newsletter, and of course do the same with Fair Observer. And we shall see you anon.
Thank you, Atulji. It's been always a pleasure to have this conversation with you, and I think I really enjoyed every moment of this conversation.
Same here.
And we look forward to more episodes of this kind.
Absolutely.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to it.
Thank
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.